Welcome back to Museum Roadshow, everyone. I'm Amy Dagerstrom, the director here at the Becker County Museum, and we've been talking about lost towns or ghost towns in Becker County. We've got just a few more to touch on, although there are many others. We could continue for quite a long time, but the three I'd like to touch base on today are Lake Center, Ogam, and McHugh. Now, Ogam, of course, still exists and still is on our map, but I like to include it because Ogam was once a really thriving community that, just like many of these others, lost kind of its drive over the course of years because it lost its direct connection to the railroad. So Ogam was incorporated in 1902, again along the Sioux Line tracks, so going north and south along Highway 59. But in 1840, there was an already part of the Pembina Trail, the ox cart trail, that went through this part of the county. The earliest settlements in Becker County were right around Ogam and White Earth during the fur trade era, 1805-06. And so there have been European settlements in this part of the world for a long time, and of course Native American settlements prior to that. Ogam had that Pembina Trail coming through, first recorded in the 1840s, so again many, many years ago. Mail came through this Pembina Trail, and then eventually, of course, the railroad came through. In 1906, the Ogam State Bank was started here and originally started as the White Earth Reservation Bank. Mr. Bomer built a lumber yard. The first hardware store was built by a man named Mr. Wally. In 1907, we had the establishment of District 100, which was the school district for Ogam. And then in 1907, a depot with passenger service was established here, and a post office was established here as well. And there's a great story about the Ogam State Bank. In the Ogam State Bank, excuse me, there was a robbery in the 19-teens. And the interesting thing about this story is that the bankers went out for lunch, right? That's when everything happens, when you're gone for lunch, right? And the robber came in, demanded the money, took the money. The people who were there, the tellers, were kind of put into a side room, and it was about an hour, hour and a half later before anybody found them, because again, they'd gone out to eat lunch. And so they went looking and looking and looking for this man. Eventually they did catch the robber though, so that was good news. But again, some beautiful pictures of the Ogam State Bank. And as time went by, Ogam received things like electricity. So 1922, electricity finally came to Ogam. 1937, they finally got modern plumbing, so that was a pretty big deal. And Ogam, again, just kind of kept going. It was close to the tribal headquarters at White Earth, and so I think that has always helped to keep the community active. But just like many others, as it lost its direct stop on the railroad line, the population kind of scattered, and so Ogam I consider to be a lost town for that reason, because it was, again, once much more thriving than it is now. Another town I'd like to touch base on today is Lake Center. Now, Lake Center is a community that wanted to be, but never was. It was a community along, again, the Sioux Line tracks. This was sat about where Pit 611 sits today, just a little bit south of that. And it was a planned community. So if we look on the plat map, you can see that Lake Center is there in the 1911 plat, but by the 1929 plat, gone, which means that really it just never happened. The railroad planned these stops along the way, and then sometimes they didn't come to be. And Lake Center is one of those. We have some wonderful pictures, though, provided by the Riesland family that show us the stores in Lake Center. This particular store was, a picture of the store was taken in about 1911. It was called Moe's Store, and it was run by a fellow named John Bratley, who was also called Blind John because he was a blind storekeeper. And in the picture you see Mrs. Hans Moe, Mrs. Peterson, Peter Haugen, Cora Haugen, Peter Haugen, and John Bratley. And then there are also some other folks in the photo that aren't identified. But this particular building still exists. So if you go to Pit 611 and you keep driving west to towards Audubon, you'll see the remaining structure of this building, which over time became a residence. So people turned it into a house. But it's kind of neat to know that that history is there. And that community was a pretty thriving little corner store supply community for people that lived around that area. And last but not least, we need to touch on McHugh. Now, McHugh is one that we might recognize in terms of name because, of course, McHugh Road still exists. If you go just to the east of Detroit Lakes, just as you're going out of town and take a look to the left, you'll see a street sign for McHugh Road. And McHugh, again, was like many, especially like Osage, a lumber town. And so this community was a community that thrived on the lumber industry. There was a school here, which again has been turned into a house over the years, so you can drive around and see if you can pick it out. There were businesses here, a great sort of thriving community that really, again, revolved around lumber. We do have the railroad stop sign from McHugh and one photograph, which is the only one that we've ever seen of that community, of a family on a front porch. So if you know anything else about McHugh, please let us know, or have any other pictures, we'd love to have them. So that kind of wraps up our ghost towns or lost towns of Becker County. We hope that you enjoyed learning about them. Again, there are many more. You can come into the museum and use the library and learn all about them. And thanks for joining us on Museum Roadshow. We'll see you next time.